The clause they never read. Sign this today or walk out with nothing. That is what three people who had worked at my company for less than a year told me, standing shoulder to shoulder like they had rehearsed it in a mirror. After 23 years of building a department from a single filing cabinet into a machine that ran half the company, I was given 15 minutes to decide my entire future. I chose to leave, but I did not touch their paperwork. I asked for a blank page instead, and I wrote 4 sentences of my own. 9 days later, a lawyer I had never spoken to before called me at 6:15 in the morning, and I could hear his hand shaking through the phone. "Ms. Calloway, we need to talk about the wording in your letter," he said, all the polish gone from his voice. The man who had smirked at me across that table went completely quiet when I explained calmly exactly what those 4 sentences meant. But before I tell you about that phone call, let me take you back to where this actually started. If you like stories where the quiet person turns out to be the one holding all the cards, stay with me. And if you want more of these, this channel is Alex, so go ahead and hit subscribe before we get into it. Now, back to the beginning. My name is Margaret Calloway, though everyone at the office just called me Maggie. I am 61 years old, and for 23 years I was the Director of Client Relations at Harlow Analytics, a data consulting firm out of Denver that built forecasting systems for regional grocery chains and logistics companies. I started there in September of 2001 as a junior account coordinator making $41,000 a year, fresh out of state college with a business degree and a car that barely started in the winter. By the time everything I am about to describe happened, my salary had grown to $286,000 a year, with bonuses tied to client retention, full benefits, and a retirement match I had never once missed contributing to. I managed a team of 44 people spread across 4 offices, and my division alone brought in $92 million in annual contracts. I was not simply an employee with a title. I was the person who remembered why a client from 2006 still called us instead of a competitor. I was the one who could explain, without opening a single file, why a particular contract clause existed. When the founder needed to recall a promise made to a client a decade earlier, he called me, not the database. For 23 years, the company could not have run without me. And then, almost overnight, it seemed to run just fine without me at all. It began roughly 7 months before that final meeting. In the spring, Harlow Analytics was purchased by a private equity firm called Brennan Cole Partners, a company that had built its entire business model around buying stable, profitable firms and hollowing them out from the inside. I had watched this exact pattern happen to 2 other companies in our industry over the previous 3 years. Experienced staff pushed out, fresh graduates brought in at half the cost. Nobody ever called it what it was. Have you ever watched something coming from a long way off and known there was nothing you could do to stop it? That is what those months felt like. The sale closed on a Tuesday in March. The new leadership arrived 12 days later. Our new chief executive was Trent Ashford, 36 years old, with a business degree from a school that liked to put its name on buildings, and a resume built almost entirely out of a startup that had failed spectacularly 2 years before he showed up at Harlow. Our new chief financial officer was Nadia Voss, 34, brilliant with spreadsheets and utterly unfamiliar with how an actual client relationship worked. Our new operations lead was Corey Lindqvist, 39, who had spent 18 months at Brennan Cole and had convinced himself that 18 months was enough to understand a company built over 2 decades. They called an all-staff meeting on a Thursday morning. Trent stood at the front of the very conference room I had helped design when we expanded our offices 9 years earlier, and he gave the speech. You have heard this speech before, even if you have never worked in an office like mine. We are thrilled about this new chapter, he said, smiling the smile of a man who has said this sentence in 4 other companies. Nothing is going to change. We value every single person in this room. Your jobs are safe. Whenever executives promise you loudly that nothing will change, That is usually the moment everything already has. I went home that night and updated my resume. But I also did something my father taught me, something he learned during his years working the assembly line and later representing his coworkers when things went sideways. He always told me that companies keep no records of their own cruelty, so someone has to. I began saving everything, every email, every internal memo, every quiet hallway conversation that felt like it mattered. I backed it up on 2 separate drives I kept at home, encrypted, untouched by any company laptop. I had seen too many good people get walked out the door with a cardboard box and absolutely nothing to prove what they had built. The termination started in April. 19 people let go in a single morning, every one of them over the age of 50, every one of them earning well above market rate for a junior replacement. Within a month, most of their desks had someone new sitting at them, 26 years old, earning less than half the salary of the person before them. Human Resources called it a restructuring initiative. I called it exactly what it was, and I kept documenting. In May, they started on me, quietly at first. I was dropped from a client strategy call I had personally run for 9 years, one covering an account transition that, without my oversight, was almost guaranteed to go badly. When I asked Trent about it directly, he told me they were bringing in some fresh energy and appreciated my past contributions. Past contributions, as if I were already gone. In June, 4 of my core accounts were reassigned to a 27-year-old named Ben who had been with the company for 7 months and did not know the name of a single client contact without looking it up. In front of my entire team during a department meeting, Corey put up a slide questioning my approach to client retention, calling it outdated and overly cautious, while my staff sat there in silence, too afraid to say anything. It was meant to embarrass me into quitting on my own, so the company would not have to pay a cent. I did not quit. I kept showing up, kept doing my job well, and kept writing everything down. My file was spotless. 23 years, no disciplinary actions, 4 company awards. They could not fire me for cause. And it clearly frustrated them that they could not. In July, they tried something else. Nadia called me into her office on a Friday afternoon at 4:40, which anyone who has worked in a corporate office knows is never a good sign. She told me my position was being eliminated and replaced with a new role, Senior Client Coordinator, which I was welcome to apply for, at a salary of $138,000 a year. I had been earning $286,000. Same responsibilities, smaller title, and a pay cut of nearly half. I smiled, told her I needed time to think it over, and drove straight home to call Ruth Bellamy, an employment attorney I had quietly retained back in May when the warning signs became impossible to ignore. Ruth's office overlooked downtown Denver from the 18th floor, walls lined with case files and framed verdicts. She had spent over 20 years handling wrongful termination cases, with a particular focus on age discrimination claims, and a track record that made opposing counsel nervous before she even said a word. That pay cut offer is textbook constructive dismissal, she told me. Do not sign anything. Wait for their next move and let me know the moment it comes. I waited 5 weeks. On a Wednesday afternoon in late August, I received a calendar invitation with no explanation attached. A meeting in the 3rd-floor conference room, the formal one, the one we only used for client presentations and difficult conversations. Not Trent's office. A conference room meant witnesses. I printed the letter Ruth and I had drafted weeks earlier, 4 sentences we had gone over line by line, folded it, and placed it in my jacket pocket. Then I walked in at exactly 2 o'clock. Trent, Nadia, and Corey were already seated on one side of the table, along with Denise Ackefer from Human Resources. 4 folders sat in front of them, already prepared, waiting for a signature that was not mine to give without a fight. "Maggie, thank you for coming in," Trent began, with the kind of warmth people use right before delivering bad news. "We have made some difficult decisions about the direction of the client relations department." Translation: you are being pushed out, and someone younger and cheaper is already picked out to replace you. I said nothing. Ruth had told me that silence does more work in that room than any argument ever could. Nadia slid the folder across the table. We would like to offer you two options today. Option 1, you resign voluntarily, and we provide 3 weeks of severance, roughly $16,500 plus your accrued vacation. Option 2, we terminate you for restructuring purposes, and you receive nothing at all, though we would of course note the departure was mutual for reference purposes. Option 2 was a threat dressed up as paperwork, and we all knew it. I opened the folder. Inside was a resignation letter already written for me, waiting only for my signature at the bottom. It released the company from any future claims in exchange for a payment that would not have covered 4 months of my mortgage. I looked at the three of them, confident, certain they had me cornered with nowhere left to go. I thought about my father, who spent 30 years teaching people not to be afraid of a signature line, and who told me once that the moment someone hands you a pen and rushes you, that is exactly the moment to slow down. I will resign, I said. Relief spread across their faces almost instantly. But I will write my own letter. Trent's smile faltered. We already have one prepared that covers the necessary language. I will write my own, I repeated, unless you intend to dictate the words for me. He hesitated, because he could not force the issue without admitting exactly what this meeting really was. Fine, have it to us by end of day. I stood and walked out at 2:41. Back at my desk, I opened my laptop and pulled up the letter Ruth and I had already written weeks before this meeting ever happened. 4 sentences, nothing dramatic on the surface. I sent her a message. 2 words came back. Send it. I printed it, signed it in blue ink, made 3 copies, and delivered it to the conference room myself before 5 o'clock. Then I packed a single box, said goodbye to nobody, and drove home. I poured a glass of wine, sat by the window, and waited. It took them 9 days to notice what they had actually agreed to. At 6:15 in the morning, my phone rang. It was Gordon Wexler, outside counsel for Brennan Cole Partners. Ms. Calloway, we need to discuss the language in your resignation letter. His voice had none of the confidence lawyers usually carry. Of course, Mr. Wexler, what seems to be the issue? You wrote that your resignation becomes effective only upon full payment of all compensation legally owed to you. Can you clarify what that means? I opened my laptop to the spreadsheet Ruth and I had built together, calm, unhurried, watching the morning light come through my kitchen window. It is fairly simple. My resignation does not take effect until I receive full payment of everything owed to me under my employment contract in Colorado law. Until that happens, I remain, technically and legally, an active employee, with every right that comes with it. A long silence followed. And what exactly do you believe is owed to you? Let me walk you through it. Base salary through today, $11,000. Accrued vacation, $31,000. Outstanding expense reimbursements, $4,200. That is only the beginning. There is more. My annual performance bonus, $140,000. My vested retirement match and profit sharing, accelerated under the change of control clause in my contract, worth roughly $980,000. And under Section 11 of my original employment agreement, negotiated when I was promoted to director, if I am constructively discharged without cause, I am owed 18 months of base salary plus continued health coverage. That is $429,000 in salary and $31,000 in insurance premiums. That is over $1.5 million. $1,636,200 plus interest, since my resignation has not technically taken effect, and I am still accruing wages and benefits every day this remains unresolved. He tried to argue that a conditional resignation would never hold up, that it was a bad faith maneuver. I calmly reminded him that human resources had already accepted and processed the letter without a single written objection, which meant, legally, they had already agreed to its terms. He threatened litigation. I told him I had 23 years of documentation, and he was welcome to see all of it in court. He called back that evening. Brennan Cole was prepared to offer $850,000 to settle immediately. I declined. I told him what I was actually owed plus Ruth's fees. He called again 2 hours later. On a Tuesday morning 3 weeks after that call, $1,704,000 landed in my account, in full. Sometimes the most satisfying ending is not the one where you win an argument. It is the one where you finally get exactly what was yours all along.